Hello, this is Stuart Wilde in the series The Secret of Life. This is a discussion on the ancient wisdoms. We will talk about the esoteric mysteries that have been handed down since the beginning of time. We will look at ways of allowing you to have that energy pattern, that energy of the ancient wisdoms, as a part of your life. I feel it's very important that a philosophy be an energy pattern that you can use. To have a philosophy that is just symbols and words and prayers is not enough in the age that we live in. And I like, personally, a mystical metaphysics that translates into day-to-day things so that you can take an energy pattern or take a thought form and create with that power something that you need in your life, be it a healing, be it more abundance, be it that you want to pull to you a person that will take you to the next step in a project that you're in, or perhaps you are looking for an interpersonal relationship that will allow you to grow spiritually. I would like to explain at this time the esoteric history of the world, remembering that when you listen to a philosophy or when you listen to a tradition that has been handed down, we have no real way of knowing if it is true or not true. We can only say this is the tradition that has been handed down since the beginning of time, or this is the story as it has been told since the beginning of time. And one takes from it what one needs, and one discards the rest. I believe that the inner you, the real you, is not your body or your mind or your emotions. It is an inner spirituality that is eternal and infinite. I call that inner spirituality the higher self. And I believe that the higher self enters into the body at birth and experiences the physical plane as a part of its growth process, as a part of its total spiritual evolution. And it does so because it has a goal that is beyond the physical plane. I also believe in reincarnation. I believe that this inner energy enters into the body more than once, and that it goes through a growth cycle. And eventually, when it has totally experienced all that the earth plane has to offer, war, famine, poverty, wealth, sexuality, femininity, masculinity, travel, creativity, music, when it has experienced the physical plane, it then goes on. It creates within itself a synapse of energy, which takes it on to other dimensions of evolution, of understanding. I believe also that the earth plane, the physical earth, also goes through cycles. They say that the cycles are somewhere between 7,000 and 12,000 years in length. And that what happens is, during these cycles, the people that are on the earth plane, they go from being very base tribal, very, very sort of rooted in the physical, and they come up through thousands of years of evolution to the point where they then begin to experience emotionalness and physicalness, and then gradually intellectualness, emotionalness, and physicalness, and finally they move out of those three energy patterns to a philosophical and finally a spiritual perspective within themselves. And in the same way, as you perhaps when you were a small child, you were rooted totally in the physical, then you experienced emotion, then you began to experience intellectuality as you went to school, and finally you created some kind of philosophy or religion that you dealt with, and perhaps at this point of time in your life, you're now looking beyond all of that to an inner spirituality, an inner seeking that is a part of what you're doing today. Okay, that is the evolution of the single person. That is the evolution of the human race. Now, what about the evolution of the earth plane? As the people begin to develop, as the populations grow, there is more and more pollution within the earth plane. There's more using up of the resources. The inner energy of the physical earth plane, the same way as the inner energy that is you, which I call the higher self, that inner spirituality, the physical plane or the actual physical earth has an inner energy as well, an inner spirituality that you do not perceive immediately. But it is the spirituality in the wind, it's the spirituality in the earth that, for example, in mythology is known as the fairies and the gnomes. It's the spirituality in water. It's the spirituality in the fire. It has an inner growth. It has an inner personality or an inner light, the same way as you have an inner light. You're not your body. The physical Earth planet is not just a physical planet. It has an inner spirituality. As the pollution starts to come about, as the people populate the Earth plane and use up the resources, the inner energies of the Earth plane move. And they do so because they move to the clearer places. They move, and you wind up with pockets of energy, or pockets of the Earth plane that are dead energy, where there is no life force. And you've all been to places like that. There are parts of downtown LA where the life force left 20 years ago. I mean, I've been absolutely amazed when I went there. There was absolutely no life force. It was totally bland and concrete and had no inner energy. As these inner energies of the Earth plane experience this pollution, experience this infringement upon them, the energies begin to move. As they move, you begin to have more and more and more imbalances within the spirituality of the Earth. And it was said in the ancient wisdoms that when the imbalances reached a peak, eventually the poles of the Earth switched. The North Pole would move and the South Pole would move, and they would become east and west. And what was originally the equator would become the north-south axis. When that happened, it was said that there were waves 3 miles high, that the winds blew at 3,000 miles an hour, and that most of the world was destroyed in a bat of an eyelid in the course of literally 20 minutes of turmoil. I've always been interested in the stories of these great animals that are found in the snow in Russia, or that have been found in the snow in Russia, where there's they have within their mouths little flowers that they were actually eating at the point when they died. And a whole species of animals, like the dinosaurs, were wiped out in a moment. And the archaeologists cannot understand why this occurred. Now, I'm not saying that definitely a cataclysm occurred and destroyed all the dinosaurs in 20 minutes, but I would like you to think about it, because it certainly might be a possibility. Each time one of these cataclysms occurs, it is like a new incarnation for the inner spirituality of the Earth. It is like it's a refreshment. There's about 300 years when the sunlight doesn't shine upon the Earth, because the amount of dust in the air does not allow the light to penetrate. And so you have, for a 300 to 400 year period, like a hothouse effect. And the plants grow, the Earth is rejuvenated, and there are some survivors. The previous cataclysmic civilizations that lived upon the Earth plane were known as the Atlantean, or the Atlantis civilization. Now, Atlantis, so it was said, was only one of those civilizations, but it was the foremost one. The same way as, say, for example, America is one of the leading civilizations in the Earth today, but also at the same time as America, we also have the Aborigines in Australia, that if you landed and you were a Martian and you saw the Aborigines, you would think that the physical plane or mankind was not very evolved. If you landed in a large cosmopolitan European or American city, you would see that mankind was greatly more evolved than the Aborigines. And so the Atlantean period had the high civilization of Atlantis, but it also had other civilizations that were less high. It had people beginning evolution upon the Earth plane, and it had people ending evolution on the Earth plane. I believe the reincarnational cycle is going on all of the time, that there are people upon the Earth plane that are just beginning, they're just entering the physical plane, they're experiencing tribal, they're experiencing disease, they're experiencing famine, and there's others that are moving through the Earth plane that understand energy, that understand metaphysics, that understand life, that are literally graduating out of the physical. And so you have parallel evolutions at all times. It was said that in Atlantis, the energy that they used in Atlantis was solar energy. When they began to harness the energy of the sun, they began to imbalance the power of the Earth. They began to imbalance the inner spirituality. It was said that the Atlanteans had a way of placing a small crystal in the base of the spine of the people that they wanted to control. And then using this projection of energy, which is, I don't exactly know how it was done, they would communicate with the people that they were controlling through this crystal, and they would dominate them. As this imbalance grew, there were people within the Atlantean civilization that did not want to be a part of this kind of infringement. They were like initiates. They felt this inner power within themselves. They felt an inner individuality, and they said, we do not want to be a part of this. And so they began to move away. They sailed away, and they traveled to various parts of the earth plane. Being in tune, being a part of this inner energy, having this metaphysical spirituality within themselves, these initiates knew where to be at the right place at the right time. They could feel the cataclysm coming. The same way that small birds stop singing before an earthquake. How do they do that? I don't know, but I believe that there's an inner electromagnetic signal that begins to become very intense just before an earthquake, and that somehow the birds feel it. Well, these initiates, the Atlantean initiates, the ones that walked away, that sailed away to the other lands, had that power within them, and they knew there was something coming, and they pulled to them groups of people that were interested in going beyond the government or the control that the leaders of the Atlanteans were perpetuating upon the people. These initiates migrated. Some went up to Scandinavia and eventually created the mythology or the teaching or the court of Odin. Some of them went to Mongolia and they walked. So when you talk about going there, you're not talking about them doing it in 20 minutes or 2 or 3 weeks. It was over a period of many hundreds of years. But they knew the cataclysm was coming, and they positioned themselves in places where they knew they would be safe. When the cataclysm happened, 30 to 40,000 people survived. The initiates were the leaders, and they had around them people that were literally their students. Once the cataclysm occurred, the civilization of Atlantis was totally lost, and you had basically a return to the tribal ways. Because people would say, well, what is a car? What is a rubber ball? If you try to explain to somebody what a rubber ball looks like and you don't have one, you take a rock and you throw the rock on the ground and it doesn't bounce. And then you have to try to explain a bouncing rock. And they say, that can't be. And so what happened basically was that the first generation that remembered Atlantis, remembered and knew the inner mystery, they taught it to the second generation, and the second generation to the third generation. But little by little, the inner spirituality that was taught by these initiate priests that had survived the cataclysm was lost. Most of it. There was a group of initiates that wound up in the area which we know today as Egypt. And they knew the inner spirituality of the earth plane. They knew about the inner light which shines from within all men, and they kept that secret. They held that secret. And that secret was taught only to those people that truly would understand it, would accept it. To those people who were, or those higher selves that were entering into bodies that were at the end of their spiritual evolution. Because the tribal people that were, let's say, in Egypt shortly after the cataclysm, were higher selves which were beginning their spiritual evolution. They were coming into this place that didn't have electricity, it didn't have roads, it didn't have learning, it didn't have paper, it didn't have writing, and they were experiencing tribal, the physical. But at the same time, there were other higher selves that were incarnating, that were completing a spirituality, a spiritual evolution through the earth plane, and they were the ones that were attracted to the mysteries. And the initiate priests held on to these mysteries. And so Egypt became one of the main centers of this inner esoteric knowledge. They had the pyramid. They knew the pyramid was a power. And the priests of the pyramid were guardians of this power. A student of the Egyptian mysteries would study for a number of years with the priests. They would understand nutritional discipline. They would understand their physical body to the limit of the medicine that they had in those days, but they understood it. They learned to control their mind and their emotions. They were taught what we would know today as mind control techniques. They knew and understood the use of herbs. And when the student was finally ready for his or her initiation into the mysteries, they were taken through underground caverns up into the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. And they were laid in a sarcophagus, which is a stone tomb, or it looks like a stone coffin. It has today a large chip out of it where a tourist clunked it with a sledgehammer, wanting to take a piece home with him. But in fact, it was this ceremonial tomb that is in the king's chamber. And the would-be initiate or student was laid in this stone coffin or sarcophagus. And during a 3-day period, the high priest of the pyramid would induce in the student a trance, a catatonic trance, using mind control and using herbs, and the student would literally be released from his or her physical body and would travel the inner worlds for 3 days, understanding the true reality that is the heritage of mankind. The reality basically being that one is not one's body or one's emotions or one's mind or one's philosophy, but an inner infinite energy within a body. When the student rose at the end of 3 days and was brought back to life, so to speak, they were considered the God-man or the solar prince because they had so much of this divinity within them, having perceived the true reality of the physical dimension, but also the parallel dimensions that are part of the physical plane. And so this philosophy or this mystery of dying and rising again after 3 days was the mystery that was handed down by the Egyptians. And that particular teaching or mystery pervaded almost all of the philosophical or religious movements that were to come at a later date. And so you had, for example, the religion of Mithra, and Mithra was a god, the god of the Romans, in fact, and Mithra died, in fact, at Easter time, and he rose again after 3 days, and when he rose and he became the solar prince, or the God-man, the man with so much divinity that he was able to save or atone for the sins of his people. And then you had the same story perpetuated through the tribal customs and through the tribal ways, because each group of people or each tribe had an inkling or a feeling for this inner mystery. Okay, what does it mean for you? You too can get in touch with that same inner energy. It is a power that's there available for you. Because you have an inner connectedness to all things, because you are a part of this inner light, and the inner light pervades all things, you can get in touch with any energy or any power that is available any place at any time. And so if you want to know what the great Hierophant of the pyramid, what energy he dealt with, you can pause, and if you are centered and you have an energy and you understand this inner power within yourself, and you can touch upon that power. You can touch upon the energy of that time. Total knowledge that has passed since the beginning of time, the ancient wisdom that is all still there. Nothing dies. Energy changes and is transmuted and transformed into other things, but nothing dies. So that power or that knowledge is there. It's known as the Akashic record. And if you have a discipline and a desire to perceive the Akashic record, you can do so. And you can pull from a feeling or pull from an energy pattern that has gone before. So let us say you have a desire to be a great harpsichord player. You can, if you're disciplined and you work, let's say, for example, at a particular hour in the day every day, and you could pull and you understand energy and you understand metaphysics, you can pull from the energy of Scarlatti, who was a prolific harpsichord performer and composer. Now you can say, well, how can that be? How can I pull from somebody that lived hundreds of years ago? The fact is that the energy or thought form or feeling that was Scarlatti was not a physical body. but an eternal, immortal, infinite energy. And that energy is still there. And so you can touch upon it. That does not mean that you will hear somebody talking to you saying, hello, this is Scarlatti here. This is what you got to do next. But it's a feeling that will motivate you as you compose upon your harpsichord. The same way as if you want to be a great writer. When I decided that I wanted to learn to write, or I wanted to begin to write books, I decided, or I looked upon, or I searched for the 20 greatest books that have ever been written. And I began to read them. I didn't actually even read them all. I just read parts of all of them. And every time I read one of those great authors' books, I tried to touch upon what the inner feeling of that book was. And so I read Flaubert's Madame Bovary, and I felt what Flaubert felt. And I read Stendhal's Scarlet and Black, and I thought, what is this energy that this man had? And bit by bit, I pulled together what the inner feeling of writer feels like. And more than anything else, it has helped me to be a writer. And when I sit and I write on my typewriter, I don't sit there and say, hey, Flaubert, Stendhal, pitch up. But I pull upon that inner knowing. And I believe that we all have that ability, as long as we know that it's there. And that is what the ancient wisdoms is. The ancient mysteries that were handed down from the Egyptians to the Greeks and to the Druids and on down through the secret societies that were prevalent in the Middle Ages are mysteries that we can all be a part of by literally knowing that they're there, being disciplined, and concentrating upon them. The death of the student initiate in the sarcophagus and his or her traveling for 3 days and rising again is the death within us of the negativity which is inherent in the subconscious mind. When the higher self enters into the body, it accepts the parentage, the nation, the imbalances and balances of the physical body. It accepts that, and it has an understanding of what it's going to be getting into. I do not believe that you enter into the body in a kind of cosmic Russian roulette. I believe that you choose the body and that you know where you're going to be. Once the higher self goes into that body, it accepts the fear, the negativity, the difficulty that it's taught by the parents, by the tribal ways, by the negativity of the civilization that it's in. And your rising again is basically your ability to quieten the subconscious mind. That is what the great mystery was all about. That is what, for example, in the legend of the Holy Grail is the slaying of the dragon. It is basically going beyond the negativity of the subconscious mind. And the rebirth is the point where you realize that you are the solar prince or the solar princess, that you have this divinity within you, that you're not your body, that you're not your mind, that you're not your emotions, that death is in fact a rebirth or a returning back to the light, that there is no fear, that there is no negativity, there's only positivity. When you perceive that inner light within yourself, you have literally risen after the third day, for example. You have incarnated into the heritage which is rightfully yours. On the next side of this tape, we will talk about how to bring that ancient wisdom energy into your life. And once you have it into your life, how do you use it for your benefit and for the benefit of the people that will be pulled to your energy in the course of this lifetime? Let us review. The higher self has an ability to perceive what it's going to be getting into, and it comes into the physical plane because it needs to experience the confinement and restriction of the physical plane. That is a part of the ancient wisdom. That is a part of understanding that the things that you see out there, the war and the famine, the degradation, the inability of people to balance energy, the violence, the lack, that is a part of the higher self's understanding. And so if you look upon a nation of people and you see them dying of starvation or for lack of water, if you cannot go beyond the emotional involvement, if you cannot understand that that is part of spiritual evolution, then you can never proceed within the ancient wisdoms or within your spiritual growth. Why is that? The reason is because you are emotionally attached to the physical plane. And we are talking about you're taking an energy from within yourself, this internal initiate energy that is within you there, that seed, that potential that you have within you, and going beyond the earth plane, evolving to other dimensions of perception, to other parts of the total spirituality that there is. Now, how can you evolve to something else if you're still stuck in the earth plane? You can't. To evolve beyond the earth plane, you literally have to leave it. And that is why the path of the initiate is always a path of great loneliness, of great tribulations. Because as you begin to turn and face the negativity within yourself, as you begin to come in touch with that inner heritage, this ancient wisdom that's within you, all that you have been rises up, rears its ugly head, so to speak, and forces you to face it. It is the dragon within you. And as you face that, and as you transmute the negativity to a total, eternal, godlike spirituality within you, as you begin to do that, you literally begin to leave the earth plane. You're still here. You're still in a physical body. You can still perceive what is going on. You can see the degradation. You can see the starvation. You can see the imbalance. But you're not part of it. If you then are emotionally attached to what you see, if you look at somebody's body that, say, is falling apart, and you look at that body and you say, this is not good that this person's body is falling apart, you are judging the situation. You are linking yourself on an energy pattern, and you are coming forward and you're actually playing God. You're saying this is not a good situation. You cannot, on an inner level, judge what is good and what is not good. You cannot know when it is time for the higher self inside that body to leave or not leave. You cannot look at a higher self that is experiencing starvation in Africa and say this is not a good evolution for this higher self. For if you do judge things like that, you return back to the level of the very thing that you judge. If you criticize something, your energy pattern falls to the level of the thing. And so the first step in creating this energy within yourself, this like radiant initiateship, is you detach yourself from the physical plane. You do so through non-judgment, through understanding that what you see in the physical plane is a part of evolution. The second part of having the ancient wisdom as part of your life is understanding that you have to have within you a sanctuary, an inner silence. That when everybody's running around saying inflation is going through the roof, the economy's falling apart, we won't be able to make a living, you within yourself have this inner power, this inner silence, that you can take time out in the day to be on your own, to review your feelings, to review your position daily. It is like constantly skimming the lake, constantly reviewing the pattern. If you have parts of your life that are not working, you can, in an early morning walk or an early morning meditation, review those parts of your life and begin to change the relationships that don't work. Begin to change the situations that do not fulfill you as a person. Because you're not here on the earth plane to be with other people. You're not here destined to stay with this one person for the rest of your life, no matter how lousy it is. That is not part of spiritual evolution. You come together with other people for growth, not for life. Now, sometimes it may be for life, but if it doesn't serve you spiritually and you don't grow from it, then you need to look at what you're doing. Because if you pass through the earth plane and you get to the end of it and you haven't understood yourself, you have not manifested this life, you have not gone beyond the restriction of the physical plane, then you haven't completed. You've missed the point, so to speak. The higher self accepts the restriction inside of the body because that is a part of its spiritual evolution. Then as it grows and as it has an ability to manifest energy in its life, it gradually goes beyond that restriction. It goes beyond the physical restriction. It goes beyond the emotional restriction. It goes beyond the intellectual restriction. And it begins to understand its total spirituality. When you go beyond all of that restriction, there will be born within you a radiant light that you can use. That power can be used to pull to you the things that you want in life. And you will find that the faster and faster your energy goes, the more you concentrate on this divinity within you, the more you will find that you have an ability to pull the things that you want almost instantaneously. Almost instantaneously. They will be there. You will have a need for a person, and that person will walk through the door. You will find that you want to travel to some particular place because it's part of your evolution or part of your greater understanding, and somebody will come up to you and they'll say, "Come here. We would like you to be here. We want to know what it is that you have to say." And you will be invited to go to that very place that you want to go to. The ancient wisdoms, the great mysteries of the Egyptians and all of the other societies, the Delphic oracle, the Eleusinian mysteries, the whole thing, the mysteries of the Druids, the initiations that they had at Stonehenge and so on, all of those things all come back to the same energy, to the same story within them. And it's the story of the fact that inside each one of us dwells this inner light, this inner higher self. It goes beyond philosophy, religion, government, physicalness, sexuality. There's a light that is inside that is beyond all of that. As you come in touch with that ancient wisdom within you, that light being in all things, it gives you knowledge. You can perceive a person 5,000 miles away, and if you just close your eyes and you feel the feeling, you will touch that inner person, and you will know what they are dealing with at this time. And you will be able to perceive it. Then, if you judge it and you say what they're going through is not correct, you will then return right back into the earth plane, and your energy or your perception or your vision will disappear. But if you can perceive what that person's doing through this inner connectedness and not judge what they're doing, be it good or be it bad, then you allow that person his or her spiritual evolution going on the way that they're going, and you just have that perception for your own growth. And so as this power develops within you, you come more and more in touch with the inner spirituality of all things. You come in touch with the power that is in the earth. You come in touch with the wind. And you'll get to the point where you will be able to stand by a tree, and you'll be able to communicate with the inner spirituality of the wind. And on a balmy hot day, when there's not absolutely a breath any place, you will feel the wind come around you. And you'll think, or you will imagine, that it's not real. So you'll do it again. And you'll pull the wind. And you'll say, "This is impossible. It's 95 degrees here. There's not a breath any place. How do we have wind around this tree?" You have wind because the inner spirituality of you has such a power, has such an eminence, that you can pull from the inner spirituality of wind, and you will feel the wind. You will feel the energy in nature. You can walk, if you have this inner spirituality within you, and you can touch a tree, and you can pull the energy that is inside the tree, and it will literally cleanse your emotions. It is like a shower. You just lean upon the tree, and you pull the energy that the tree has, and you will feel the inner spirituality of nature healing your body. Because it has a purity, a fast movingness that literally enlivens the cells within your body. And because the inner spirituality of nature has no emotion, what happens is, as you stand against that tree, it is like taking a bath in pure light. And if you are working upon healing a certain area of your body, a 5 or 10 minute meditation at dawn of that kind, working with nature, will greatly assist you. It will give you an impetus, a momentum to heal that part of your body which is moving slower than the other parts of your body. For when a body is diseased, those diseased parts are slower moving than the other parts of the body. The energy pattern. Okay, the question is, how do you pull this inner energy, these ancient wisdoms, how do you pull from the energy of the Akashic record for your benefit? We've talked about the inner sanctuary and silence, being in the world but not judging the world, not criticizing it, not standing up and saying, "This is no good." Beyond those two perceptions, there are two more that you have to incorporate into the total energy pattern that you are. The first one is that you will never get involved in defending what you are. Never will there be a defense of self. That is the Tao. That is the mystery that was taught in ancient China. That if a person comes up to you and says, "You are the stupidest idiot in the whole world," you will say to them, "I agree with you." If they will attack you in some way, you will pedal backwards. You will never confront. You will never get involved in locking horns with the physical plane. You will constantly pedal backwards. You will constantly stay within your energy pattern. And if people come up to you and they say, the philosophy that you're leading, the life that you have chosen, is just a bunch of absolute rubbish, and that you should follow our philosophy, you thank them. And you say, "I'm sure there's beauty in your philosophy." But you don't join. You just stay within what you are, never defending it, never having to explain it to anyone, never having to compromise what you are. Now, that means also that you don't flaunt your energy. You don't say to people, "I have this great perception. Come hither. I will heal you. Come hither. I will do a reading for you. I will tell you about the romantic involvements that you can be involved in a future. There's a tall, dark stranger on the horizon for you." You don't get involved in that, because when you do that, what are you doing? You're going back into the physical plane. You're saying, "I feel this energy within me. Now I've got to go flaunt it. Now I've got to go sell it. Now I've got to go take it to these people and show them how wonderful I am, how incredibly perceptive I am, how great my powers are." And when you do that, you fall at the first hurdle, because you cannot go beyond the earth plane if you're still in it. And if you need to go impress the people in the earth plane with all your inner guidance and your inner knowledge, you haven't left the earth plane. Okay, understanding this Taoist principle of non-confrontation, of non-defense, it allows you to accentuate the non-judgment, non-criticism of the earth plane. It allows you to not criticize yourself either, to not judge yourself either. And so when you act in a certain way, you don't sit there and say, "Well, I'm leading a terrible life. That was a terrible bad thing I did." Because then what happens is your energy drops back down to less than infinite. In the infinity of things, there is no right and wrong. There is no morality. There is only energy. There is high energy, and there is not so high energy. But all energy is a part of the greater understanding that you are going through within the earth plane. And so if you look upon your life and you criticize it in a negative way, you are literally dropping back into the physical plane and giving it a morality that it doesn't have. Because within energy, there's no morality. And when I do seminars, to get this point across, I invite people to come up and talk to the electric plug on the floor. I ask them to lie on the floor and talk to the electric plug and say, "Plug, I'm sorry that I did these things in my life." And I ask people to do that because it's a dramatic way of explaining to them or having them see that within energy, there's no morality. Within the inner light, it's not a matter of right and wrong. There is high energy and there is not so high energy. There is energy that will help you and there's energy that will hold you back. But you can't begin to moralize about what you've done. If you have areas in your life, things that you've done that you're not pleased with, then what you do is you meditate upon them for a moment and you release them. You say, "When I was a small child, I would steal cars, and that is an infringement upon people. And it was bad that I stole those cars, but I go beyond that because that was part of my spiritual growth, part of my evolution. It was part of me going beyond lack. Now I'm here in later life and I understand that through an inner energy, through action, through creativity, I can pull to me as much abundance as I'm ever going to need. And so now I don't need to go steal cars. I have 5 of my own." That is how you release an old energy. Of course, if you suddenly go back and start stealing cars again, you drop back into that old energy pattern and you cannot step beyond the restriction. But the fact is that anything that you have done, if you can forgive yourself for that, if you can release it, if you can understand that it was a part of your growth and where you are today, is you are here because you were able to go beyond that particular thing, then it releases and it just becomes a part of the energy pattern that has gone before. And so that is why it's important not to criticize yourself or to harbor guilt or remorse, because you cannot judge. So much as you can't judge the world, you cannot judge yourself either. Within you, within that inner light that we've been talking about, that ancient wisdom, is a perfect self. You cannot be diseased. You cannot be less than perfect. You cannot be less than abundant. If you have no money, if you're totally potless, it's a temporary aberration in the energy pattern around you, because the inner you is abundant. The inner you is perfect. And so if you align with those parts of your life that you do not consider are worthy or proper or were not morally correct, you align with a permanent negativity. Whereas if you align with the inner light, you say, well, I used to steal cars when I was a kid, but I have a perfectness inside me and I understand myself and I release that energy. And then you go beyond. And as you go beyond, your energy quickens. You become more of that inner light, and that affirms even more and more and more the infinite perfectness that is within you. Okay, we've talked of silence and sanctuary. We've talked of non-judgment. We've talked of the philosophy of not defending the self, not criticizing the self. The final part of establishing this power within you is that you have to establish a strong identity of self. You cannot go beyond the world and still be in it, meaning that you have to begin to develop a creativity within yourself that is you. That is you. Like, what do you think? What do you teach? What kind of pottery do you make? If you make the kind of pottery that everybody else has made for 500 years, there is no God force within that. If you write or teach children the same way as everybody else has taught children, if the type of mothering that you give to your children is the mothering that everybody else gives to their children, there's no creativity within it. Establishing an identity within yourself is saying, I'm eternal, immortal, universal and infinite, and I am beyond the earth plane. So if everybody says a pot's got to be this shape, I'm going to make it a totally different shape. If the people in the earth plane say it can't be done, I say it can be done. If they say inflation's going through the roof, I say I don't care. I'll have a skylight. I don't care. I'm an individual. I'm not affected by the negativity or the thought patterns of the world around me. As you create this power identity within yourself, you step beyond the physicalness, you step beyond the restriction of the national emotion, you step beyond government. Now that doesn't mean that you flaunt the law, but you step beyond worrying what the president's doing or not doing, or what the treasury is doing or not doing, or what the changes in the tax laws are doing or not doing. Because the inner abundance within you will give you more than enough money no matter what the tax laws are. You don't care, so you step beyond it. You step beyond structure. You step beyond structured religions. Because what are structured religions? Structured religions are the subconscious belief patterns, the tribal translations, what the tribe said the God force is. But when you look at what somebody else says the God force is, or what this inner light is, it can't be it. The only thing that inner light can be is what you experience, what you express in the world. God, the inner light, is basically you-shaped because it is within you and it is within all things. And so you cannot accept a God force that is packaged in some package that somebody else gives you. You can take that and you can learn from it, but eventually you have to understand that within that there's a restriction and that you have to go beyond it and create a pure light within you that is your identity, your gift to the earth plane. And the initiate, as she or he rises again after 3 days, turns round and goes back into the earth plane, not as the great "come hither, my child, I will heal you" type of energy, but silently walking as an unknown sage, walking through the world, assisting wherever possible, assisting those people that are pulled to the energy. Not going out and trying to convert the world, or not going someplace and mailing a whole bunch of bags of rice to the starving millions, but just being an energy. Being this divine light you shaped, and being the greatest potter in that part of the world that you happen to reside in, or the greatest, most original mother, or the most fantastic opera singer, or the greatest cab driver in Chicago, or whatever it is, whatever your predilection is in expressing this power within you. The energy that you have, the path of the initiate, can only be a path of power if you will incorporate into your life discipline. There is no other way of doing it. We've talked of silence, we've talked of non-judgment, not criticizing yourself, no defense of self, establishing an identity beyond the earth plane, beyond the restrictions that the other people say that you have to be a part of. But to really make your energy move, there has to be a discipline, especially at the beginning. The reason for this is that the negativity of the subconscious mind, those feelings, those limitations that you were taught in your early childhood and in your teen years, and in those limitations that you've acquired since that time, if you do not incorporate discipline in your life, you can never go beyond the power of the subconscious mind because it is so strong. This is not a tape where I can totally discuss disciplines because I just wanted to give you the ancient wisdom. The kind of disciplines that I'm talking about are the discipline of physicalness, where you understand your physical body, how it works. Nutritional discipline, so that you allow your body to be controlled, so that your emotions are not running rampant. Emotional discipline that allows you to calm down your energy pattern, that allows you to pull out of that sort of franticness that the rest of the world live in. And finally, a discipline of total balance, that as you walk through the world, you understand that you have to come into a situation with a balanced energy pattern. And when you fall out of balance, you know that you must immediately correct that. Now, in this tape, I cannot give you the 4 disciplines of the initiates. However, if you're interested in the 4 disciplines of the initiates, you might want to refer to a series that we have called Developing the Sixth Sense, which you will find in the Mystic Trader catalogs, and that will give you these 4 disciplines in. Finally, as you learn to pull from this all-knowing, I would like to give you a meditational technique that I have used. I went to Egypt once and spent some time in the Great Pyramid at Giza researching brainwave patterns. And when I was in the pyramid, I realized that there was an immense power in there, an immense ancient wisdom, an inner connectedness to these ancient mysteries. Now, in recent years, the pyramid energy has been given a very hokey connotation. And when we go to these psychic fairs sometimes, you see people walking around with like pyramids on their heads, and they're usually like 3 parts wacko. But the fact is that within the pyramid was the sort of the sanctuary or the keeping of this ancient power. And so in a meditation, I visualize myself sitting in this pyramid, this inner energy inside the king's chamber. And I've been to the pyramid, so I know what it feels like. But if you haven't, you just visualize yourself inside that pyramid energy, and you can pull from that power, because energy is immortal. It never dies. It changes, but it doesn't die. Nothing dies. None of the thought forms that you've ever had will ever die. They will change. And as you begin to understand yourself, as you begin to incorporate some of these techniques within you, as you begin to feel for the energy within the ancient wisdoms, you will feel that light growing within you, and eventually you will come to an understanding that you are truly eternal, immortal, universal, and infinite. And that gives you a limitlessness. A limitlessness. And that is your heritage. When you get to that point, you have completed this incarnation within the earth plane. You might have another 40 or 50 years to live, and that will be beautiful because you will have a gift to give to the people. Once you have got to that point, you will be able to give of yourself, and they will be inspired to go upon the journey that you are now on. Thank you.